I had a full scholarship to Stanford Law School, a career path mapped out since I was 16, job offers from 3 top firms before I even graduated undergrad. My professors called me brilliant. My future was golden, untouchable, mine. And I threw it all away for a man who promised me forever and gave me 5 years before deciding I wasn't successful enough to deserve him anymore. My name is Melissa Grant, and this is the story of how I sacrificed my dreams to build someone else's empire, only to be discarded the moment he reached the top, and how I made damn sure he regretted underestimating the woman who made him. I met James Crawford in my senior year of college. He was charming, ambitious, working toward his MBA while I was finishing my undergraduate degree in political science. We fell in love fast, that consuming, all-encompassing kind of love where you can't imagine life without each other. When I got accepted to Stanford Law with a full scholarship, I was ecstatic. My dream was finally happening. But James had just been offered a position at a startup company in Austin, Texas. A risky move, but he believed in the company's potential. And when he asked me to come with him instead of going to Stanford, he made it sound romantic, like we were choosing us, like we were building something together. "Melissa," he said, holding my hands, "I know this is huge. I know Stanford is your dream, but we can build an even better dream together. Come to Austin with me. You can take the Texas bar, work at a firm there. We'll support each other. And when I make it big, because I will, you'll have been there from the beginning. We'll celebrate together, as a team." He made it sound so reasonable, so partnership-oriented. And I was young and in love and stupid enough to believe that sacrificing my dreams meant I was choosing love. So I did it. I turned down Stanford. I turned down the job offers. I moved to Austin with James and told myself it was temporary, that I'd find my path there. But Austin wasn't Stanford. The firms there didn't have the connections, the prestige, the opportunities. I took the Texas bar and got hired at a mid-tier firm doing basic contract work. Nothing like the constitutional law I'd wanted to practice. Nothing that challenged me or fulfilled me. But I told myself it was fine because James needed me. His startup demanded everything: 80-hour weeks, constant stress, financial instability. He needed emotional support. He needed someone to handle the household, the bills, the life admin he didn't have time for. So I became that person. I worked my 40-hour weeks and came home to be his therapist, his cook, his cheerleader, his everything. And it worked. James thrived. His company started growing. He got promoted to senior management, then to VP, then to executive leadership. Within 3 years, he was making 6 figures while I was still doing contract reviews for $60,000 a year. But I was happy for him, proud of him, because we were a team, right? His success was our success. That's what he'd promised. That's what I believed. But as James climbed higher, something shifted. He started coming home later, talking less about we and more about I. He'd go to networking events and galas without inviting me, saying they were work functions and I'd be bored. He'd travel for conferences and never suggest I come along. When I'd ask about his day, he'd give vague answers and change the subject. And slowly, painfully, I started to feel like I was becoming invisible in my own relationship. Like I was a fixture in his life rather than a partner. Then came the night that shattered everything. James came home from a company retreat looking serious. He sat me down and said, "Melissa, we need to talk." Those 4 words that never mean anything good. He took a breath and said, "I think we've grown in different directions. You're still doing the same work you were 3 years ago. You're comfortable, settled. But I'm growing, evolving, moving up. I need someone who matches my ambition. Someone who can network at my level, who understands the world I'm in now. And honestly, you just don't fit into that world anymore." I sat there, frozen, trying to process what I was hearing. This man, who I'd sacrificed Stanford for, who I'd moved cities for, who I'd supported through every late night and every stressful quarter, was telling me I wasn't good enough for him anymore, that I wasn't ambitious enough. I finally found my voice and said, "James, I gave up Stanford for you. I gave up my career path for you. I moved here to support your dreams. And now you're saying I'm not ambitious enough? He had the audacity to look annoyed. That was your choice, Melissa. I never forced you. And honestly, if you'd really wanted that Stanford career, you would have made it happen. The fact that you didn't shows that maybe you weren't as ambitious as you thought. Maybe you were always meant to be comfortable at a mediocre firm doing mediocre work. And I can't be with someone who's satisfied with mediocrity. If you're still watching, hit that like button right now. Because what I'm about to tell you next is how I went from broken and discarded to destroying the man who thought he could erase my value. I moved out that week. Stayed with a friend while I tried to piece together what remained of my life. I was 30 years old with a career I'd never wanted, in a city I'd only moved to for someone else, with 5 years of my life wasted on a man who saw me as a stepping stone. I spent days crying, wondering how I'd let this happen, how I'd become so small, how I'd let someone convince me that my dreams were negotiable. But then something inside me snapped. Not sadness, not grief.
Rage. Pure, focud, productive rage.
Because James was right about one thing. I had made a choice. I'd chosen to sacrifice my ambition for someone else's. But I could make a different choice now. I could take back everything he'd made me believe I didn't deserve. I quit my firm, used my savings to pay for LSAT prep because enough time had passed that I needed to retake it. Studied 12 hours a day for 3 months. Scored in the 99th percentile. Applied to law schools again, Stanford, Harvard, Yale, Columbia. Got accepted to all of them with scholarship offers because my undergraduate record was still stellar and my story was compelling.
I chose Harvard.
Not because it was better than Stanford, but because it was 3,000 miles away from Austin and from James and from the version of myself who'd been small enough to fit into someone else's vision. Those 3 years at Harvard were the hardest and best of my life. I was older than most of my classmates, starting over when I should have been established. But I was also hungrier, more focused, more determined. I graduated top of my class, got recruited by one of the most prestigious constitutional law firms in the country, started making twice what James made at his precious startup. And I made sure everyone in our old social circle knew about it. But the real revenge? The twist that made everything worth it? It came 2 years after I graduated from Harvard. I was sitting in my corner office in New York when I got a call from a former colleague in Austin. She was laughing. "Melissa, you need to hear this. James's company just got investigated for fraud. Turns out he'd been inflating numbers to investors for years. The whole executive team is being prosecuted. It's all over the news." I looked it up immediately, and there it was. James Crawford, the man who'd told me I wasn't ambitious enough, who'd climbed his way to the top by telling me I was mediocre, was being charged with securities fraud. His face was plastered across business news sites. His company was bankrupt. His reputation was destroyed. And the best part? The detail that made me smile for the first time in years? According to the reports, the fraud had started during those 3 years when I'd been supporting him, when I'd been handling our finances while he built his empire. He'd been lying and cheating his way to the top the entire time, and I'd been too busy being his emotional support system to notice. Before I finish the story, I need you to subscribe and drop a comment telling me what you would have done, because what happened next is poetic justice at its finest. James reached out to me 6 months after the charges were filed. A desperate email. "Melissa, I need to talk to you. Please. I made terrible mistakes. I'm losing everything. I need help. I need a lawyer. You're the only person I trust." I stared at that email for a long time. This man who'd told me I was mediocre, who discarded me for not being ambitious enough, who'd made me feel worthless, was now begging me for help. Begging the constitutional lawyer he said would never amount to anything. I replied. One sentence. "You were right, James. We did grow in different directions. I grew up. You grew corrupt. Good luck finding someone at your level to represent you." And I blocked him. The trial was public and brutal. James was convicted on multiple counts. Sentenced to 8 years in federal prison. Lost everything, his money, his reputation, his freedom. And I watched it all from my corner office, knowing that while he'd been telling me I wasn't good enough, I'd been supporting a criminal who was building success on lies. The irony was almost too perfect. But the story doesn't end there. Because 6 months after James went to prison, I got a call from an unexpected source. His ex-wife, the woman he'd been married to before me, who he told me was unsupportive of his career and held him back. Her name was Patricia, and she wanted to meet. We met at a coffee shop in Manhattan. Patricia was elegant, composed, and had a familiar sadness in her eyes. She said, "I saw the news about James, and I saw your name come up in relation to the case, that you were contacted as a potential character witness but declined. I had to reach out because I need you to know something." She told me her story, how she'd been a rising architect when she met James, how he'd convinced her to move cities for his first job opportunity, how she'd taken a lesser position to support his career, how she'd sacrificed her projects, her connections, her trajectory, and how, after 5 years of building him up, he'd left her for not being ambitious enough, for being comfortable while he was evolving. The pattern was identical. James hadn't just done this to me. He'd been doing it for years. Finding ambitious women, convincing them to sacrifice their dreams for his, using their support to climb higher, and then discarding them the moment he reached a new level. Patricia and I sat in that coffee shop realizing we were part of a pattern, and we wondered how many others there were. We found 3 more. Sarah, who'd given up a PhD program, Jennifer, who'd left a tenure-track teaching position, and Alicia, who'd abandoned her medical residency. 5 women across 12 years. All of us had sacrificed our careers for James. All of us had been told we weren't ambitious enough when he was done using us. And all of us had been replaced by younger women who he'd eventually do the same thing to. We decided to do something that James would never recover from, even after prison. We wrote a collective essay, published it in a major online magazine, titled "The Pattern of Ambition Theft: When Partners Weaponize Your Sacrifice." We detailed everything: how James had systematically targeted ambitious women, convinced them to abandon their paths, used their support to build his career, and then blamed them for the very sacrifices he'd asked them to make. The article went viral. Millions of views. Women everywhere sharing their own stories of sacrificing careers for partners who later blamed them for not being successful enough. The conversation exploded around the concept of ambition theft, partners who take your dreams and then punish you for not having any. James's name became synonymous with the worst kind of manipulator. Even after he got out of prison, his reputation was beyond repair. Not just as a fraud, but as a man who'd built his entire success by destroying women's potential. No company would hire him. No woman would date him. He'd become a cautionary tale, a villain in a story about what happens when you mistake support for weakness and sacrifice for lack of ambition. Today, I'm a partner at my firm. I argue cases in front of the Supreme Court. I mentor young women lawyers and tell them never to make themselves smaller for someone else's comfort. Patricia rebuilt her architecture career and now runs her own firm. Sarah finished her PhD and teaches at an Ivy League university. Jennifer wrote a best-selling book about her experience. Alicia completed her residency and is a practicing surgeon. All 5 of us rebuilt what James tried to destroy. And all 5 of us are thriving in ways he never could. My name is Melissa Grant. I gave up Stanford Law School for a man who promised me partnership and gave me abandonment. I sacrificed my ambition for someone who later blamed me for not having enough of it. I let myself believe that supporting his dreams meant giving up my own. But here's what James never understood. Ambition doesn't disappear when you sacrifice it for someone else. It goes dormant. And when it wakes up, it's angrier, hungrier, and more powerful than before. James is out of prison now, living a small life, working minimum wage jobs, forever Googled as the man who stole women's ambitions and called it love. And I'm here, living the life I should have had 10 years ago, only better because I earned it twice. Once before him, when I thought it was easy, and once after him, when I knew exactly how much it cost. This is what happens when you confuse sacrifice with weakness. This is what happens when you take someone's support for granted. And this is what happens when the woman you discarded for not being ambitious enough turns out to be more ambitious than you ever were. She just had the misfortune of wasting 5 years believing in you first.